Before man-made contraceptives, women have been figuring out when they can get pregnant and when they're not able to since the beginning of time. Let's talk about fertility awareness method. My name is Aditutola Taura. I am a board certified women's health nurse practitioner. Okay, so fertility awareness method is pretty much understanding, being in tune with your body, if you will, knowing the best time during your monthly cycle for you to get pregnant versus when you have the least chances of becoming pregnant, whether to increase your chances of pregnancy or to use it as a form of contraceptives so that you do not become pregnant, okay? So in order for us to know that, we need to first discuss our monthly cycle. So the monthly cycle is the first day of your period and the first day of your next period. So that is your monthly cycle. However long that length is, the average is 28 days, right? So the first day of your menstrual cycle and the first day of your next menstrual cycle. That's your monthly cycle. In order to learn about fertility awareness method, we kind of have to understand what happens during that monthly cycle. So let's talk about it. In the first week when you have your period, this is because your uterus is shedding. Your body's like, oh, I didn't get pregnant, so let's shed. Now that uterus gets thick because it is expecting for when the sperm joins the egg to stick to your uterus so that it can become viable, okay? That is what happens each month. Each month, your uterus is getting ready to have a baby, and when it doesn't, it sheds and you have your period. So while you have your period, the cycle is starting over. It starts in your brain. Y'all, the female body is a phenomenal thing. The way everything is connected is wow. So it starts in your hypothalamus, which then sends a signal to another part of your brain, anterior pituitary, to release hormones, FSH and LH, which then sends the signal to your ovaries, which then releases estrogen. So that first week, your brain is at work. It's doing a lot. It's like boom, boom, boom. Let's get it back going. Once your estrogen starts to peak, that is essentially after your period. And then that is pretty much telling your uterus to get ready. We might have a baby coming. Start getting us ready, okay? Now, what happens during this time is your body is getting ready to release an egg. Releasing an egg essentially is what we define as ovulation. Females, we were born with a set amount of eggs, a set amount of follicles that carries an egg. We don't make it. It doesn't start over. We already have it, but each month it's getting released, all right? So once that egg is released, that is when you've ovulated and that egg is looking to join with the sperm to create us humans, to create a baby, okay? Now, let's go back to estrogen. So estrogen, what it does in that second week is it's peaking, it's getting higher. So once it gets high, it's like, okay, all right, I'm high. And then that kind of triggers a hormone called LH. And LH is the single indicator that you have ovulated. So that's why some people use like a urine dipstick to check your LH hormone. Now, when they check that and they see that it's high, that's indicated that they've ovulated. That's also another form of checking when you've ovulated, okay? So once that happens, you peak, you ovulate, your egg is released. Your egg has 24 hours to join with the sperm until it's no longer viable. Your egg literally is only alive for 24 hours. After that, if it doesn't attach to a sperm, you can't get pregnant, okay? So why then does it seem like this is like so much more and it seems like we can get pregnant for more days? Well, it's because of the sperm. The sperm is strong. It stays alive longer. The sperm can live in us for up to 5 years. 5 years. Ooh, child, not 5 years, honey. 5 days. 5 days. 5 days. 5 days. And there's even been some research that said that sperm have lived up to 8 days. And who knows, maybe even longer. We find out things more and more. But the general consensus is that sperm can live up to 5 days once it's inside the uterus, okay? So how do we determine when to either have sexual intercourse to increase the chances of being pregnant, or to not have sexual intercourse to increase our chances of not being pregnant, okay? Depending on what you want to do. Let's talk about it. So we're first going to talk about cervical mucus consistency. Now, let's go back to estrogen. Now, this hormone changes your consistency. The way that everything, the body is working, it is so phenomenal. Your consistency of discharge can let you know when you're not fertile, when you are almost fertile, and when you are good to go, okay? So we're going to talk about that consistency. Now, this is one of the fertility awareness method that is used, where you check your consistency every single day to determine what it looks like, okay? What it feels like, so that you can get an idea of it. The thing with fertility awareness method is you have to really be consistent with it. It's not something that you can just do for a month. You have to do it for 3 to 6 months. You have to do it for several months to really understand how your body is pretty much showing when you're fertile. You have to be on top of it and be very consistent. So after your period, the consistency is said to be creamy, thick. It's hard for sperm to get through thick consistency, okay? So that means that you're probably not fertile, all right? And then it starts to get to the pre-ovulatory phase, where it starts to get wet, okay? It starts to get more slippery, all right? Okay, so now when it gets to the ovulatory phase, it is said to be more wet. It is more slippery, if you will. It is more thinner, all right? It is said to be stretchy, like an egg white. No chickens were harmed in the makings of this video. All right, let me show y'all. All right, so the consistency like an egg white. Let me see if y'all can see that. Let's grab another good one. Okay, you see? Yeah, so like an egg white, okay? So stretchy, it's thin. You can see through it. Sperm is able to get through that, okay? Because it's thinner, it's wet, you know? It's just, once you see that consistency, that means you're ovulating, that means egg is releasing, and that means you got about 24 hours for your sperm to join the egg to get you pregnant. Now, this is the reason why pregnancy occurs more when people have sexual intercourse before you've ovulated versus after. Now, after, your consistency is more thick. It's creamy. It's harder for sperm to get through, okay? So once you see that, then that means that you've ovulated and you're no longer fertile or able to become pregnant. All right. So with this method, once you start to see your pre-ovulatory wetness, all the way to 3 days after the thick mucus discharge, then those are the days where you are most fertile. So 3 days after that thick discharge starts to come, then you are no longer fertile, okay? It starts from when you start to get wet and watery, the beginning of that, the first time you see that, to 3 days after that thick discharge. Now, another method is the basal body temperature method. This one, it is very important to note that once your temperature increases, you've already ovulated. It actually doesn't determine ovulation. It determines once you've ovulated. This is why with the fertility awareness method, it's more effective when you combine them, okay? So with this, you know, the chances of your temperature increasing due to other causes are obviously a disadvantage. You know, your temperature can increase due to an illness, it can increase due to alcohol consumption, even though if you are trying to conceive, you should not be drinking alcohol, okay? It can increase due to shift working, you work different shifts, it can increase due to some medications too, can increase your temperature. So with this, the chances of there being an error could be high, but once again, the more you pay attention to your body, the more you do it, the more you're able to go off of, and the more you're able to understand how your body works. So I'm going to walk you through some ways to make it more effective, okay? You make sure that you are taking your temperature at the same time in the same way every day. Either if you're going to do oral temperature, do that same thing every day. We advise for women to do it first thing when they get up in the morning, okay? Make sure that you get a good night's rest because that can make it more accurate. Record as much as you can because that would make you understand your temperature changes a little bit better with more data you have, as I said before. So now what should the temperature say? So the temperature, if it increases by 0.4 degrees Fahrenheit or more for 3 days, that is when you've ovulated. Okay, because your temperature increases once you ovulated because progesterone starts to come into your body. When progesterone starts to come into play, progesterone increases your temperature. But once progesterone is now in your body, your egg has already been done. Okay, so you've already ovulated. Once again, once your temperature increases 0.4 degrees Fahrenheit for 3 days in a row, consistently, that determines that you have ovulated. If it increases by 1 day, that's probably an anomaly. But you want to make sure that it increases greater than 0.4 degrees Fahrenheit for 3 days in a row. Okay. Now we're going to talk about a fertility awareness method where you don't have to pay attention to your symptoms. You just have to pay attention to your cycles. Okay. So you pretty much record your cycle each month. You record the length. So remember we talked about the first day of your cycle to the next day of your cycle. You just record that every month. So you can use an app tracker to pretty much just say first day of cycle, last day of cycle, and it'll record it for you. So with this method, you're gonna do some calculations with your shortest cycle month and your longest cycle month. So let's use me for instance. All right, y'all gonna be all in my uterus. Okay, so for me, we're gonna use the past 6 months for me. So my shortest day was 26 in the past 6 months. So how we calculate this is I'm going to subtract 18 from my shortest cycle days. So let's do that. So 26 is my shortest cycle day, meaning the first day of my period in 1 month to the first day of my next period was an interval of 26 days. So we're going to do 26 minus 18 will give me 8 days. Okay, so on day 8, I am expected to be fertile. Now, if you want to count, remember your first day of your menstrual cycle is day 1. So if I have 7 days of menstrual cycle, day 8, I am expected to be fertile. Now, you're going to subtract 11 from your longest day. Okay, so 31 minus 11 would be 20. So that gives me from day 8 of my monthly cycle to day 20, I am most fertile. So if I want to get pregnant, I should be having sexual intercourse during this times. If I don't want to get pregnant, I should be using contraceptives such as condoms during this time or abstinence during this time. Now, why is it so long? Remember, we just like to be more sure and be more careful again, because the sperm can stay in your body again for up to 5 days. So we give and we add a little bit more days. So essentially, it's a good 12 days of meaning that I need to be careful, essentially that I'm said to be fertile. Now, if you're not able to do this, meaning that you haven't been recording your cycles, you can do the standard method days, which is essentially from day 8 to 19, which mine falls in between that. It's said that most people, based on our average monthly cycles, day 8 to 19 is the days that we are fertile. So that's also another way to use it, but you can do that in the meantime. But what you should make sure that you're doing is now start recording your cycles so that you can be more accurate. Now, with the fertility awareness method, this method, you must have a cycle every month for it to be accurate. If you don't have a cycle every month consistently, you're not able to do this method. Also, I wanted to mention that the pregnancy rate is higher with this, just simply because there are rooms for error. So if you're gonna do this method, it's important for you to know that your chances of becoming pregnant is higher with this method. It's about 20% chances of being pregnant the first year of doing this, and 80% of not. It's still high. It works if you work it. The more you work it, the more you're consistent at it, the more you pay attention to your body, it can be up in the 90% with the most effective hormonal contraceptive. If you have any questions, any comments, any concerns, please leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.